All right, I'm going to cut across to some more big breaking news coming in. Development coming in from the state of Maharashtra. Governor's letter on security threat has been accessed. The governor calls 38 Shinde loyalists as Sena MLAs. This is what, as it's mentioned in that letter, he calls those 38 Shinde loyalists as Sena MLAs. Maharashtra governor seeks security for these rebel MLAs. Governor Bhagat Singh Koshyari writes to the Maharashtra DGP seeking more security for the rebel camp. This, of course, comes in the backdrop of much security threat for all these rebels. We saw that Shiv Sainiks, largely in many parts of Maharashtra, have vandalized property of the rebel MLA's office and many of them their homes as well. We saw the Shiv Sainiks there camping and intimidating family members. So at this point, clearly, while on one hand you have the centre deciding to give Y+ security for at least 18 of those rebels, you have Bhagat Singh Koshyari, the governor of Maharashtra, who addressed the rebel camp as Sena MLAs, asking for more security for these dissidents with immediate effect. He's written to the DGP of Maharashtra saying, issue more security for these rebellions, these rebel camp MLAs at this point because of the threat that they've received. Let me cut across to Sahil Joshi on that. Sahil, who has that letter, the governor's letter on security that he's written to the DGP of Maharashtra, he very clearly asks for at least 38 of those Shinde loyalists to be given additional security. What more is in that letter, Sahil? Would you be able to read that out for us?
Well, Nabila, the story in that letter is not the security because it's already been, it's already been given by the CRPF, by the centre. The story is that that governor is calling these group of MLAs as Shiv Sena MLAs. He is referring to them as MLAs from Shiv Sena, whereas there are they are coming out as a splinter group. The Deputy Speaker of Maharashtra Assembly is sending notices to the MLAs basis on the complaint and petition filed by the Shiv Sena, saying that these MLAs should be disqualified, and he's calling all these MLAs as Shiv Sena MLAs. That is the big story. The governor is saying that this group is basically Shiv Sena MLAs, and more importantly, he has mentioned in that letter that on 25th of June, he received a letter from these 38 MLAs, 2 from Prahar and 7 from Independent. So that means in all, there are 47 MLAs at this point of time in Guwahati. These MLAs sent him a letter on 25th of June, and immediately taking cognizance of that, the governor dashed a letter to the DG, and while referring to these group of MLAs who are supposed to be the rebel MLAs, he has called them the Shiv Sena MLAs. That is something which is really interesting. That shows that where this whole fight is going to be. And more importantly, Bhagat Singh Koshyari, who is just back today, he was hospitalized because he was contracted with COVID on 21st of June when this rebel started, and today when he is back at the governor house, the first thing he does is to send a letter to DG and asks him to provide the security, and also refers this group of MLAs as as Shiv Sena MLAs. He doesn't normally the governor forwards the letters to the Home Minister or the Chief Minister that this is what I've received, please act on it. Right now what we can see is that the governor is directly writing to the Director General of Police and asking him to report back. That is something which shows that the governor is trying to take control of the administration. The governor is directly writing the letter to DG and ask him to act on it, rather than forwarding it to the Home Minister that he has received some kind of a
what do you think could have been the alternative? At this point, Sahil, from what we see, that the Uddhav Thackeray-led government aren't really acting on this law and order collapse. Clearly, we're seeing Shiv Sainiks running amok. There's vandalism and violence reported from different parts. We see those visuals as well. Despite Section 144, those prohibitory orders have not even been imposed. So maybe it was mandated for the governor to intervene, to step in and issue a letter to the DGP. Do you think this is certainly not a regular affair? But since there seems to be trouble in the government acting on the prohibitory orders, it seems like the governor has decided to step in himself.
Well, we have to understand certain signs from the letter. There is always a protocol. The government has not fallen yet. The government is still in existence. There have been complaints in the past against the government, and the governor has always chosen this path to send the letter, forwarding those letters to the Chief Minister, marking its comments on it, that you should please act on it, or for your pursual, or XYZ. That is what normally the governor does. He never gives orders to the administration directly that you should be doing this. The DG doesn't report to the governor. You know, right now the government is in place. The government has not been dismissed. The government has not lost a vote of confidence. Right now there is a full-fledged government is in place. Whether the numbers clearly can show that they don't have the numbers at this point of time, but whether they have the confidence of assembly or not, that will be decided only on the house. We cannot decide that. The governor has chosen to directly write the letter to DG and asking him to report back, gives a sign that it looks like that now that the governor might take the things under control, and there will be another friction which will begin from the government side as well as from the governor's side. And more importantly, when the deputy speaker is acting against these MLAs, the disqualification procedure, the petition filed by the Shiv Sena MLAs, rather than referring to them as 38 MLAs have sent him the letter, he has specifically mentioned that these 38 MLAs belong to Shiv Sena. That is something which is more important. Even Shinde group calls itself the original Shiv Sena group, and it looks like that the governor is endorsing it. That is something which we have to look at.
Well, whether the governor has really endorsed it deliberately, or was this just momentary while he writes that letter? Because so far we address those MLAs as Sena MLAs. It's natural to call them Sena MLAs because they have won on a Sena ticket. But whether the governor is really endorsing this whole separate party demand that Shinde camp is making or not, that remains to be seen. But at this point, Sahil Joshi, of course, raises all the doubts, asking if whether the governor right now is really supporting the rebel faction and their demands for a separate party. No official word has come on that, but the writing on that letter is quite clear. With the governor calling them Sena MLAs, it appears that there seems to be some tacit support already. But again, we can't cast aspersions at this point. But Sahil, a quick word on the legalities of this. We're looking at the Shinde camp wanting to float a whole separate party, calling this separate faction as the Shiv Sena Bala Sahib. That's exactly what they want to call it. While Uddhav Thackeray digging in his heels, saying that you can't use my father's name in your party. Go use your own father's name. This is the kind of low-level politics that